I wanted to start, normally I'm the person who it tends to be that I like show some movie clip. You could have probably put Buddy on the fact that it would be the Chronicles of Narnia or The Lion King, which we aren't going to touch either of those today because I got stuck. I was honest. If I'm honest with y'all, I was prepping for this and I'm like, okay, there's got to be some illustration or some movie or some relative story that just clicks for everybody. And I couldn't get there, and I got really frustrated. Honesty is something Luke was like, this guy's so honest in worship. It's something I wrestle with. Like, it is a fight, but I think that's what makes it so present, right? Like, I think sometimes whenever we're fighting with something and we feel that internal tension, we have to be willing to kind of push through it, right? We have to be willing to like show off the fight a little bit, because if we aren't showing it off, then what are we doing? That's kind of how I see it. I was like, I need to show the people around me that it's okay to push through this stuff. It's okay to wrestle with the honesty in my heart because it takes courage. It takes guts or gusto or whatever verbiage you want to use. But what it actually really takes, I believe, is that removal of fear. And that removal of fear like blinds us from looking within ourselves for a few minutes. Okay. So, we're going through this passage today. It's from a story rooted in 2 Samuel 11, or 2 Samuel 11. I think that was the last time that I actually taught on that story, which was kind of funny. It's on the YouTube page, Restoring the Rhythm. But it's the story of Daniel. He's off at battle where he's not off at battle where he should have been. He stayed at home. His eyes got a little wandery. He looks across the way. He sees this lady in a Bathsheba, right? And he looks over and he's like, something's catching my eye. And he ends up falling in sin and sleeping with this woman who's married. And then in the gesture to cover it up, which praise God, I hope none of us have gone this far, he actually murders. He gets her husband killed to try to cover up the whole thing, right? And it's just this really heartbreaking story that I read and we've heard it and we've seen it taught. But I want us to kind of take a minute because as I was saying, I couldn't think of a story to connect it. I couldn't think of what's a movie to and I'm sure there's something out there. I don't like movies, so that's probably what it is. But I got so stuck because I started to realize that the Lord was like, dude, just the story. Yeah. Everybody can connect with the story. We've all had these moments of where honesty sits in us and we get stuck and we're we've probably all felt like what we read about David here at some point. And maybe it's not that deep. Maybe we didn't, do what David did. Maybe we did, I don't know. But this overwhelming feeling of remorse, that common after effect of sin that sits in your gut and you kind of sit there and you go, why did I do that? Or why do I have to deal with this? Right? Those deeper questions. One that pops in my head every time is what were you thinking? Right? And I feel that's probably what David's response was in this moment. Was oh, okay. But what we're going to look at today is actually that response from that emotion in Psalm 51. And those emotions are an ever common reality for each one of us. I would argue that when we know that we've done something wrong, there's probably that little piece of us that goes, oh, shoot. I did that. And now you have to kind of sit and look at it, right? It's important for us in this moment to kind of press into those feelings. Like I said, have that tension with the honesty, have that fight to break through and see what it is that we need to connect with and what it is we need to lay at the cross, instead of bringing that mess back into our lives as we so often do. But as we unpack this today, I want us to do it with the lens of hoping to adopt the same attitude that David had. So I want us to kind of look at this in a lens of going, as we go into a place of worship, which if we know who we are, we know that worship is a place that we live and breathe out of every day, right? So if we know that, then this can be a posture for our hearts every morning when we wake up and we remember that His mercies are new. So because I care a lot about my note takers in the room, I am a self-proclaimed academic. I want to get my terminal degree. I am a school nerd. I don't know what it is. I just love being in class and learning and soaking stuff up and writing papers. APA is my thing. And I'm something he's crazy. I'm not an athlete. I'm an academic. So in the spirit for my note takers today, I'm going to put up some points. And these are kind of some of the things that we're going to work through today. We're going to break down these 5 steps of a heart's turn to worship. So we're kind of going to look at first that cry of desperation or a plea of mercy or a plea for mercy. Next, owning your mess, owning your junk, right? Like we've got to take ownership of it. We've got to know what we've done. We've got to say it. We've got to speak it, and then we got to repent for it. Then what happens after that? We return and we remember God's faithfulness. And then finally, we're recognizing what we have left after that. And you can see that one gives a little mystery, which I love. So let's hop into it. So the first point, this cry of desperation. And I think in it, what we see is verse 1 and verse 2, which should be up behind me here in a second, is have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions and wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. In those two verses, I think it's unique. The only way that David knew how to request mercy was that he first had to know where it came from, right? You can only give something if you own it, right? And the Lord owns that mercy and he gives it. And I think sometimes we're quick to forget that, in all honesty. I know I am. I'm like, oh, I need to find mercy for myself by beating myself up. No, that's not going to be how that works. It's not going to be this self-deprecating cycle that we so often fall into when we fall into sin, but instead recognizing who the Lord is and that he is the source of the mercy, right? Yeah. All right. I like it when y'all talk. That's fun. Right? Yeah, that is nice. But I think just in the same point, you have to be aware in order to receive. So there's that second piece. Not only do we have to know where it comes from, we have to know that we need it. You know, I'm looking at these babies around the room, and they let you know when they need something. She let you know at 3 o'clock this morning that she needed something, right? And it's like, okay, I guess we need something at 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't have kids yet. I want to one day, and I'm like, man, I want kids. And then I'm around these people who go, yeah, I was up at 3. And I'm like, I want sleep more than I'm like, oh man, I don't know about that. But in that same sense, I think that from that point, what we actually forget is who we are and where we've come from and what he's done. I think it's really easy for us to get to forget family, right? It's easy to forget what family we've been grafted into and whose we are. That he calls us his kids, his beloved. Like, I will never forget, I got the chance right after college to officiate 2 of my friends' weddings, and I opened it. I'm not like licensed. They had an actual pastor come in and do that part, but they were like, we just love you so much that we want you to do this. And I opened the wedding, beloved, be loved, and welcome to the wedding ceremony of Nick and Lauren. And I was just like, what does it mean to be called beloved? It takes some action. We have to be loved, you know? Like if we're going to know ourselves as the beloved, we have to love the Lord and we have to receive the love that he has for us. And I think in this moment, David's kind of catching up to that reality, right? He's looking at it and he's like, have mercy according to your unfailing love. From that place, I know who I am. And we often forget that we have that familial access, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to go to Luke's parents' house. Well, maybe Luke's parents, but fill in the blank. I might not be able to go to Bryce's family's house, right? And I could just walk in and be like, hey, y'all, how you doing? And just reach in the cabinet, grab my food, sit down on the couch, and be like, who is this guy rolling up at my house, right? I know I'm from small town Virginia. Something else might happen. But in that sense, it's like we've got to remember, like, because of who we are, right? That family piece. If we know whose we are, then we get access into that space. And I think we're really quick to forget that. I am. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Most of what I'm teaching today is what I wrestle with, okay? Because sometimes you got to just speak it out and go, yep, I struggle with this, right? That's the part of that being honest and humble fight. But I think from this place, we forget sometimes that we know that we have family access to the Lord. And it's a desperate cry. It's not a passive cry. Like David in this moment, he's like, oh, Lord, help me. Like, he's sincere in it. And I think sometimes we just kind of check the box, right? We go through the motion of like, okay, yeah, Lord, forgive me of my sins. Okay, and we forget that personal piece like Luke was talking about. I think that desperate cry is just that revelation of knowing how badly we actually need it. We need him. We're nothing without him. And that necessary place that we hit is so pivotal for each one of us. I think the final thing that I wanted to hit, I keep swapping between what I'm looking at. I think it's important to remember too that this is actually something God delights in too, right? If we look at Micah 7:18, it says, the prophet penned this verse. He was consoling people who basically forgot who God was. They forgot about their identity in the Lord. And he says, who is a God like you who pardons sins and forgives the transgressions of the remnant of his inheritance? You do not stay angry forever, but delight to show mercy. Like it's something he takes joy in. I think that's something for me that I have a really hard time with. And the older I've gotten, it's something that I've begun to unpack and realize that I have this broken view that God the Father actually takes delight in showing mercy. It doesn't make much sense, right? Like sometimes I think our dads, we tend to, or our moms or whoever, it's like, no, he just kind of walks it away, pushes it out. They're frustrated in those moments. But I think it's important for us to remember that he delights in showing mercy. Yeah. Y'all trucking okay? I'll go for point 2. All right, let's own our mess. So verses 3-6 will pop up behind me, but I want you to pay attention. As you can see, it says, for I know my transgression and my sin is always before me. Against you, you only have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So you are right in your verdict and justified when you judge. Surely I was sinful at birth, sinful from the time my mother conceived me. Yet you desired faithfulness even in the womb, and you taught me wisdom in that secret place. I want you to go in that, that second verse, verse 4, against you and you only, right? Like that piece of knowing. And there's actually, hang on y'all, I'm catching up with my own eyeballs. There it is. Luke, can you hit that next slide for me? So if we look at that first piece, for I know my transgressions, that word know unpacked again, like Luke mentioned a few weeks, gnosko. It's intimate knowledge. It's a deep knowledge of something. But I want you to take this into effect. This is actually what David is saying. He's saying, I am conscious of my rebellion. I'm aware of what I have done against you. And that conscious awareness increases our awareness to know where we actually sit in line with the Lord. This is what I refer to from our own standpoint, where I know I'm very good at screwing up and messing up and kind of keeping on that flow. I refer to this as the Krispy Kreme theory, which sounds strange, I know. Track with me for a minute. We get good at that thing where we, how many of y'all have gone to Krispy Kreme? You eat a donut, right? You take the box home. You eat one on the way home, right? And then you get home and you're like, oh, I just had one in the car. I'll have another one, right? Yeah, I know. Everybody's ashamed to say it. We eat the good thing and then we go, wow, that was good. I know I shouldn't have another one, but maybe just one more. And then suddenly our box of 12 is a box of 4. And we've eaten so many donuts and we're so kind of confused by it. Our pants don't fit. We're having to go to the doctor. It's like all of these different things. And I think so often, how often do we become aware of our sin and then turn right back to it? Like that verse in Proverbs, so a man repeats his folly, so a dog returns to his vomit, right? So a dog returns to his vomit just as a man repeats his folly. And I think in that sense, like much like the donuts, pun intended, we get glazed over in our sin, right? We get stuck in our own ignorance, our own lack of awareness of what we're actually doing whenever we start to fall into that place of sin. And suddenly I would say arguably, probably worse than our own ignorance, our own self-denial, where we go, oh no, it's fine. It's just one time. And then suddenly we're looking at our sin 3 years later and we're like, that was much more than one time. I'm there. I've been there. I'm learning to lay those things at the feet of the cross every day and go, Lord, I know that's not what you have for me. I know you have something better. Whew. And it's from that place that David comes in and he's like, Lord, against you and you alone, every other sin against man is all against you. He acknowledges his own transgressions, and we have to own what is our own, right? We have to take ownership of it, and that's what we see David do in this moment. The only way to walk into that posture of worship is by owning our own mess first. Right. And guess what? You can't own your neighbor's mess. and your neighbor can't own yours. Like, you have to be able to pick up what is yours and carry it to the cross. And I think so quick we go, oh, well, I'm not wrestling with that like so-and-so is. And suddenly we've put this piece in front, like we've put a mirror in front of where we're trying to look at the Lord. And we cover that space and we go, oh, well, mine isn't as bad as so-and-so. Or, oh, I heard this in Cadre and I'm not doing that. So I guess, And suddenly the sin that we're actually living with, we degrade it and we push it back when in reality, the Lord's like, no, I actually need that too. The things that you might not think is offenseful, like they're just as offensive. There we go. Whew. Academic, right? All right. So once you get in the role, man, you just kind of keep going with it. Oh, man. I want to read a quote from Charles Spurgeon on this verse that it actually hit me pretty hard. And as I was reflecting on it, he says, to an awakened conscience, pain on account of sin is not transient and occasional, but intense and permanent. And this is no sign of divine wrath, but rather a sure preface of abounding favor. And I think so often I'm quick to go, oh, the Lord's going to spite me with his wrath. And like, I keep spiting myself. Whoo! Anybody else? Am I by myself? Like so quick, I beat myself up to the point where I'm bloody and bruised. And the Lord's like, well, what'd you do that for? I wasn't doing that. I didn't have that intention. What my intention was actually just to look at you and go, hey, I know who you are. Get up, come out and go. Yeah. Right? And I think we're quick to forget that piece. And that's, oh my gosh, I'm going to stay on this for a second because I really do believe, and I'll argue again, I think this is probably the hardest step. I think the hardest step is that it forces us to come face to face with where we might be failing the most. But I can tell you personally, I've recently been reminded that it's from this place we not only learn who we are, but we learn who we were made to be, right? Like it's not just who we are now and who we're becoming, but it's like the Lord has this whole plan that goes so much farther for each one of us. This intense and permanent pain is not just a pain, but a preface because in the moment we're turning our eyes onto the King of Kings and remembering the gospel. Right? So in that moment, whenever we're prefacing this and we're looking at it and we hear what Spurgeon says, that it's no sign of divine wrath, but rather that preface of abounding favor. Because we get to look at the gospel, we have access to the King of Kings. We know the death that Jesus Christ died on the cross. Then from that place, we actually get to go, okay, I know what comes next. And it's not a life of being beaten down and hindered. The Lord has access for us today. And I think that's so important to remember. But it starts with recognizing it and owning it. All right. Point 3. There we go. Like I said, I was trying to help my note takers out as much as I could today. My mom used to take notes in church every Sunday, and I'd always be like, wow, she writes so fast. And the older I got, I learned I couldn't write that fast because I never learned how to hold a pencil right. But I can type. And, whatever you need to do today, right? God's faithfulness, I think in verses 7 through 12, which will be behind me, as you read through this, I think it's important to recognize that in these moments, this is kind of where David is remembering what God is capable of. He comes back into this piece of awareness of like, God takes delight. It's that re-recognition. I think so quick we recognize it, and then we do that whole self-spite thing where we're like, no, that wasn't it. And then we start to we fall into our own little pit of despair. And in this verse, I think David actually points out, he's like, it's your faithfulness. Cleanse me, wash me, hear me, right? Hear joy and gladness. Blot out my iniquity. Create in me a pure heart. Restore the joy, right? All of these little pieces start to come up in this moment. David's coming up on the other side of the hill. How often do we stay in the valley, right? We're so quick to get stuck. But this is where I think, like the first 2 points were kind of these prefaces of what worship needs to be and how we get to that place. And I think this is where we ascend the hill with the Lord. This is where we start to go, okay, I know who I am. I know whose I am. I know who I am. And how can I start to work in that space of recognizing and remembering, but then operating from this place of God's faithfulness. And David had to do it. Let's not forget what David just got away with, right? Like, David straight up killed a dude, and he did a lot more, and it was not pretty. 2 Samuel 11. But in that moment, what I feel like he's actually doing, he's recognizing, he's like, I can't come on the other side of this without the Lord. And I think we're so quick sometimes to just go like, I don't need the Lord because the Lord doesn't need me. And he's like, no, I do. It's family, right? Have you ever sat at a family table? Didn't know this was coming. I remember one of the first holidays after my grandfather passed away. And we all kind of sat around. We knew we were missing someone. And I think in this similar vein, when we forget our family identity, the Lord kind of sits there with tears in his eyes and he's like, my table's empty. Like, I know that they know better, but my table is empty. Something isn't right. Like, Lord, today, show us how to come back to the table. That ascension of the soul comes after this practice of awareness and this practice of ownership. And we enter into worship as we become aware and we recite the truths that we know about God. And from that place, right, then we start to remember, oh, there is a seat for me at the table. There is a spot with my name carved in the wood of the table, right? I think so quick we think it's just those little table tent cards that we can just throw away. I think the Lord has set names in stone and he's like, no, this is yours and I'm going to save it until you get back. Verse 10, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit in me. I think this is the pinnacle moment where David just takes this moment of reflection. He takes this moment of recognition, which turns into reflection and then fuels adoration. In this moment, he's looking at it and he's like, I know, I need you, Lord. I'm recognizing the need that I have for you. And from that place, I'm going to continue to reflect until it becomes my identity. The only way, total confession, I skipped the dentist for way too long in the last few years of my life. I have some pretty bad adverse childhood experiences to the dentist. Went 7 or 8 years without going. Bad. Born with no enamel on my teeth. Really bad not to go for 7 years. But I was so afraid. And I walked out of my most recent appointment, which was the hygienist, and we sit there for an hour, and she looks at me, she goes, it's going to take more than an hour to undo 14 hours of work that didn't get done. And I think in this moment, David's asking the Lord, come and create in me a clean heart. Come create, come create, come create, come create. Come in, right? He's opening that space up, but then from that place, I need you to create. I need you to move something. And let me tell you, the only way that we know what has been moved in our hearts is if we're able to reflect and acknowledge what's happening and then adore the worker that did it. I think back to going to the dentist. I remember, Jen, she looks at me, she's like, okay, we're all done. I sandblasted your teeth and flossed and, did all these things. And I'm like, sandblasted? She's like, yeah, we don't use a little polisher thing. We use this Cavitron or whatever it's called, right? And she's like, sandblast. And she's like, it looks a little bit better. Do you want to see? And I'm like, doubt it, but okay. And she hands, they give you these fake glasses to put on to keep your eyes from not getting blasted. And I'm basically blind without my actual glasses. So I put them on and I look in the mirror and I'm like, I literally teared up. I was like, okay, they aren't as white as the sun or anything, but they look better. And she just looked at me and she's like, well, that's what we need. Sometimes we just need a little work. And I'm like, well, that'll be a sermon point. And sure enough, I think sometimes, like I said, it's so important. But remember, the only way that I could see that work had been done was by reflecting. It's by adoring the one who had done that work. And I'm like, Jen, thank you so much. But then I'm also recognizing that it takes action on my part, right? If we want to keep good dental hygiene, you got to brush your teeth, you got to floss, you got to water pick, you got to mouthwash, whatever you got to do. In that same sense, if we want to keep up our relationship with the Lord, it's this cycle of recognizing where we are and what we've done is turning that back into reflection once we recognize the mercy that he has for us and giving that adoration and that worship back to him. All right. My last point, somehow I'm already here. Our offering. On the screen, oh, I hit the wrong button. On the screen, you'll see it. You do not delight in sacrifice, or would I bring it? You do not take pleasure in burnt offerings. When my sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit and a contrite heart, you, God, will not despise. May it please you to prosper Zion, to build up the walls of Jerusalem, and then you will delight in the sacrifices of the righteous, and burnt offerings offered whole. Then bulls will be offered on your altar. So as we look at that verse, I think is so important. We have to recognize what we have left. You know, like, what do I have left at the end of the day? All he wants is an honest heart. And in that place, that's what he's after. He wants this honest, vulnerable, unshielded, just open heart that's willing to go, Lord, I recognize who you are. I recognize what you have for me, and this is it. I come to you with all that I have today. And I love this part, because before David submits any offering whatsoever, he emphasizes that his heart must be the first offering, right? Like, he's like, okay, all of these things, I thought it was interesting. I was trying to figure out what this whole piece about, as we go back and we look at that, it's like the burnt offering first, and then it's my heart, or you don't want it. Right. My heart, now you want it. What? I think so quick we're easy to look at this and forget, like, all he wants is our heart. It's not everything else. I am so quick to go, yeah, Lord, here's my tithe, or yeah, Lord, here's my time. But then I forget, what about this thing? And I will tell y'all, this church taught me how to do that. I will never forget one of the first conversations I had in 2019, entering into when we were first starting Cabin, and someone in this room looked at me and they said, I know that you can bring a lot to the table, but I don't want any of it if your heart isn't in the right spot. No one had ever said that to me. And I'm telling y'all, from this spot right here in this room, that's it. Yeah. We are after the heart of the Father for each and every person in this room. Yeah. And that's why we're doing a whole series on worship, so that you all can begin to, maybe there's pieces of today that's kind of hitting a little hard and you're like, oh, I do get stuck there. That's why we felt the need to teach on it and actually open it up, so that way we're aware of what we might need as a body. And it's from that honest heart that we actually do have something to bring, like Luke was saying. I think sometimes we're so quick, it's like, I feel like the Lord would really know a counterfeit $100 bill when he saw one. I can. And I'm looking for that little strip, right? And I think the Lord knows when we bring our counterfeit heart to him too. I've done it plenty of times. If I'm honest with y'all, I was wrestling with it for the first 20 minutes of worship today. I was like, everything sounds weird. David's mic keeps messing up. I don't know what's wrong. I'm hot. Other people are cold. What's my problem? I'm like, all of these things are flowing through my brain, and I'm like, why is this such a tension? I don't know who that person is. People always like, I don't know who's going to hear me teach. I'm self-conscious. Does my outfit look okay? Should I have worn the tennis shoes? Should I have worn the boots? Like, all of it goes through my brain, and all of a sudden I become so self-aware, right? But really what it is this self-denial that I'm not trusting that the Lord can do what he wants. I think we're so quick to put our image out there first. We're so quick to put, like, yeah, I do this, or I look like that. Y'all know I could go on a whole soapbox about social media and how it just, I believe that it actually breaks away the heart of worship. I think it is nothing but a comparison machine. Literally. It's a machine made to compare that makes you buy stuff so that you can be better. And, I could go on a whole tangent. But I think when we recognize that those pieces, like, we have to begin, it's going back to that beginning and going like, what was David saying was the problem in the first place? What was he aware of? What did he become aware of? And then from that place, when we start to break those things out and we go, oh, wait, I don't need the comparison machine, because that actually holds me up a lot in worship, And it's from that place that we begin to roll. I think, if I'm honest, I think that same piece inhibits us not just in our worship today either. It's in our day-to-day. In our daily life, whenever we start to look at the things that maybe lock us up, and we look at someone else's Instagram reel and we're like, oh, well, I want that. And they're like, wait, I've never wanted that until literally this very moment, right? And suddenly we're just caught up in it. And I think sometimes it's okay to look at those things and go, yes, I want. But I think we have to keep that in check. If you're going to look at it and want it, like, is it turning into lust? Because lust isn't just sexual, y'all. Yoo-hoo. It's a lot of different ways. And this isn't in the notes, so just bear with me for a minute. But that's that honest heart. When we start to build in these barriers in front of our heart and we start to set down the walls and we start to make these real things that block us from the heart of the Lord, then we have to remember, like, okay, I've got, just as quick as I put them up, I've got to remember to pull them down. All right, now I'm actually going to land the plane. I think, and it was funny because I was planning on doing this and Luke texted me. Luke got to go hang out with a bunch of other cool church leaders in Oregon on the other side of the country this week. He's like, I think one cool thing if we could do is add some practicals to it. I'm like, bro, I got you. Don't worry. Like, it was on the list. And because that's how I am. I am a to-do list functioner. Like, I have to have a to-do list. I use an app on my phone to make to-do lists. Like, the regular notes app doesn't work. That's how bad it is. And, but what it does is it actually helps me recognize, like, and I have things that repeat every day. I have 4 email inboxes, 5 that I have to check at work every day. And if they weren't on that list, it isn't going to happen. So this is your list. If you're a list person, welcome. We've got 2 tools for you. And David, I think you're over there bouncing Abby, but whenever you're ready, take your time. I'll take mine too. I don't care. But 2 rhythms I wanted to introduce you all to. The first one being what I call, well, actually, hang on. Let me make sure that I hit everything. Oh, I kind of skipped over some stuff. Hang tight. Yeah, David, you're good. So as we get to that honest place of worship, I like just skipped over a whole chunk about it. Sorry, y'all. We have to get out of the mindset that what we do in Sunday morning or wherever we're going is a playlist, right? I think I'm so quick to just go, all right, next song, and okay, now teaching, and my favorite part, lunch, right? Like, no, that's not how Sunday should function. That's not how our day-to-day should function either, right? I think we're so quick to forget that it's actually this interaction with the Lord. It's a movement with the Lord. It's a dance. Honestly, I'm not a good dancer, but let me tell you what, when I'm dancing with Abba Daddy, like, I know that I'm dancing good, you know, because I pull my glasses off and I just like, Lord, here I am. I got you. I have nothing else. I can't see anybody. I couldn't tell who that is, you know, like, but it's this moment for me to just get honest before the Lord and go, like, this is it. All I need is you. Because every other sense can shut down and I just need you. And it's this honest peace in that space of worship. And I think it's just a practical practice, right? Next up, as you can see behind me, it's not a feelings game either. I think we're quick to sometimes go, oh, did I feel that? Somebody said they felt something and I ain't feel it. Uh-oh. And it's like, no, that's not it. There's your comparison engine again, right? Thing that'll only break your car down instead of make it drive. His presence drives us, not our feelings. We have to go, Holy Spirit, come, fill my heart. Make a way where there is no way. That's one of the first things in worship that I do. I'm like, Holy Ghost, help me. Like, make a way, break down the walls, right? Break down the walls of my heart, right? It's like, actually break them down, please. Guess what? He gives good gifts. He hears you when you ask. Ask for those things. I think sometimes we're so forgetful that we can ask and enter into that place. But that's why we have a spot at the table. Now, I will also say this. Some of us also need to learn how to take our feelings that we feel in the room about what's happening, about the other person in the room, and we need to put them on the shelf and just leave them, right? Think so quick. That's that whole piece about getting desperate. Like, Lord, I'm having a hard time working through the frustration that I have with my brother in the room, or the thing that I know my sister in the room said about me last week that I'm really still mad about. And we have to go, but right now, I'm not going to think through it. I'm going to put that on a shelf and I'm going to focus on the Lord. Presence over pressure, right? Don't copy anybody. I mean, watch them lead, sure. Be inspired by what you see the Lord doing in them, but it doesn't have to look just the same. Guilty. I do that sometimes. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to do that now. No, like, just be with the Lord. Do you ever go on a date and look at the people across the room that are also on a date and go, oh, I guess I'll eat the way that they're... No, you're in that moment, right? You're in that intimate moment, and it's so important to just keep your eyes fixed on the King of Kings. All right, and then probably one of mine that I trust the most with myself is that self-check before the self-wreck, right? Where am I actually at? If I'm going to roll up in this room and I've had a bad week and I've fallen to sin a lot and I know that I'm mad and I'm really ticked off at like 6 people out of the 20 people in the room, am I going to let that demolish everything when I come in? Where is my heart? What am I holding on to that is not mine to hold on to? I think that's kind of that shelving your feelings a little bit, but it's also making sure that we know where we are and we invite the Lord back into this whole process that we've seen David play out in Psalm 51 of search my heart, know me. Like, create in me a clean heart. All right, so now my 2 rhythms. I'll give y'all these. David, now you can actually come up. Sorry about that. All right, we'll call the first one the State of the Union. I check in with the Lord in the morning, kind of when I wake up, right? I start with that check-in, I lay it down, then I write it down. Those are my 3 steps. So I check in with the Lord in the morning or whenever I'm going into a space, and I kind of go, okay, what is that thing that I probably need to lay down? What is that thing that is like on my heart that I cannot shake? Maybe it's the offense, maybe it's the jealousy, maybe it's the greed, maybe it's the comparison, fill in the blank. And I remove that from my heart. I go, Holy Spirit, come and take this from me. Help me lay this down at the foot of the cross. Because I know that that's the thing that's going to keep me from fullness, right? Have you ever tried to park a car where a car is already parked? It don't work. You got to move that car and put the other car in it, right? So if we know that we have something in the way of our adoration to the Lord, we have to remove that and go, okay, now I've opened that space and I'm going to enter in and know I'm here to worship the King of Kings. The other thing that I'll do is write it down. Sometimes this is me, again, that to-do list, right? So I'll write it, that way I know that I can see it, and then I'll actually take it, ball it up, throw it in the trash can. Okay, I know where that went. I know that that's gone, and I know I don't have to look at it anymore. All right, now my second one is what I call the remind and repeat method. It's a little similar to the first one, but I'll repeat that simple phrase, Lord, you're worthy of it all. Lord, like less of me and more of you. And I hold it and I use it to return. So from that, what I'm saying is I'll repeat that phrase and I'll kind of keep it in my pocket. So throughout worship, and I was actually practicing this today, like, Lord, you're worthy. It was something so simple. Lord, you are worthy. That was it. But what it does is it reminds me so that when I do get distracted and my brain goes off on the wayside, I kind of come back and I go, well, Lord, you are worthy. And it pulls me back to that center place of knowing where my heart should be. And over time, I mean, let's use another car analogy. Cars are actually so cool now that they self-pull themselves off of the lines on the road. You know, like when you start to run over, some of them will correct. But I think in this sense, we have to remember like, okay, we got to recorrect our wheel position a little bit. But I use that when I get distracted to kind of recenter myself on that heart in the moment. Sweet. That is all that I have for you today. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. But I'm going to close us with prayer really quick.